Welcome again to Father Paul's Talk. Today we are celebrating the third great sign of the Epiphany season in which we're in. We celebrated the coming of the Magi, the wise men, to visit the young baby Jesus. We celebrated the baptism of Jesus by John in the River Jordan. And today we're celebrating how Jesus turned water into wine at the wedding feast at Canaan and revealed who he was, the living God. The story is that Jesus was invited with his friends and his mother to a wedding feast. And his mother realizes that something is going to be wrong in the feast because it looks like they're going to run out of wine, which would bring great embarrassment to the couple getting married. So Jesus' mother asks him, "Can you help?" Jesus is reluctant, but in the end he does. He tells the servants to take the great big quantities of water and to serve the water from jugs at the wine table at the feast. And when they do, they find that these jugs of water have become jugs of wine. And the banquet manager of the time, as it were, congratulates the couple, not only on their wedding, but how they've kept this amazing wine to the very end. This miracle of Jesus, this great sign of the Epiphany, speaks to the church in so many different ways. One of the most profound ways of which it speaks is that this idea of this feast, this wedding, this time of great joy, happiness, feasting, people being together, communion of souls, is a sign, a picture of heaven. It's an image of the feast of heaven that still awaits us all. But let's look closely at this wedding that Jesus is participating in. Where is Jesus in this wedding? He's there at the very heart of it. He's singing, he's talking, he's listening to people, he's eating, and he probably would be dancing with the people. It's really at the very heart of the wedding, and that's so often why people have this reading at their weddings to speak about the way in which God at a wedding is there present, celebrating with them. And then, as I said, we have this instance when Mary asks Jesus, "Can you help?" And Jesus is reluctant. He's reluctant to take centre stage. He doesn't want to, as it were, draw attention to himself. And so he at first he refuses. But as I said earlier, he helps in the end. This way in which Jesus is, in the context of that wedding, on the fringe of things, and yet fully participating in it. He doesn't want to allow the bridegroom and the bride to be, as it were, misplaced, and for him to replace them as the centre of attention. And this teaches us so many things, as does the wedding itself. In our life as disciples of Jesus Christ, more often than not, it's like that wedding is taking place continually in our hearts, in the sense that Jesus is there within our hearts, but he's not, as it were, drawing attention to himself. He's not being the centre of attention. It's like he's almost like in the corner of the room of our heart somewhere. He's there. And it's almost as though, if you want Jesus to take centre stage in your heart, if you want to put Jesus at the centre of things in your heart, then you really got to invite Jesus. You've got to almost persuade him to come and, as it were, take the seat at the top table with you. Jesus, as it were, wouldn't be coming to your wedding in your heart and sort of expect the doors to be swung open and for a great big seat to be arranged for him. He wouldn't be expecting you to applaud him. No, he comes as the quiet one, the humble one, the one who, as he said, doesn't draw attention to himself. Look at the wedding again. The only people that knew that Jesus turned the water into wine was the servants, okay, his mother, probably, and Jesus. No one else did. Jesus doesn't, in that way, draw attention to himself. And so I say to you again, Jesus, God, is in our hearts. But you cannot expect God to, as it were, shake the foundations of your heart. You can't expect God to, as it were, scream out at you, or as somehow make you feel guilty or demand your attention. No. God is there, in your hearts, waiting for you to invite him to come and sit with you at the top table, where he will listen to you, where you will talk together, where you will decide the future together. And it will be an experience of companionship, communion, joy, sharing even of sorrows even in that moment. This Jesus who turns water into wine takes something very good, in many ways something very beautiful, the water of the earth, without which we could not live. And so often in our culture here we take water for granted, but it's a precious thing. And yet Jesus takes this precious thing, this something very ordinary, and transforms it into something else, the wine. Or we can say this, Jesus takes the water of the earth and turns it into the wine of heaven, something more wonderful, something more beautiful. And then, as it were, he sits with us and offers us the cup of the wine of heaven. And it is true that through the centuries, Christians have seen this miracle of Jesus, this great sign of Epiphany, as pointing to the Eucharist, the Holy Communion, the breaking of the bread, in that something ordinary, like bread, something ordinary, like wine, becomes something so much more. The bread of earth, the wine made from grapes, becomes the life of God, the wine of heaven. And Jesus, as I've said earlier, invites us to invite him into this feast. And this image of this wedding feast at the end of time, where there will be this celebrating, this joy, this great experience of well-being. It's this that God invites us to continually. Not simply in the terms of this feast in the age to come, this wedding feast, but now. God invites us to, as it were, experience something of this being with him at this wedding, here and now, today, in our hearts. And he invites us to experience that. But as I say, he's in your heart, but you need to call him. You need to sit with him at your top table. Jesus, right from the beginning, gathered people together who became his friends, his disciples. And he wanted them and encouraged them to invite others to this wedding feast, this great party in the new age to come. He wanted his disciples to invite people to share something of that joy of the kingdom today. And so it is for us as disciples of Jesus Christ, even in these most difficult times that we are living, is to do as Jesus wants us to do, which is to invite people to share something of this feast, this joy of life, this sharing in the life of God, the life of the church. Jesus wants us, as it were, to be the invitation for other people. Or we can say this, Jesus wants us to invite people to the wedding feast so that strangers may become his friends and friends of each other and friends of us. And when we think of Jesus turning water into wine, Jesus wants us to go out into the world, to take what is in the world and make it something more. Jesus continually invites us not only to celebrate the feast with him, not only to invite other people to share his life and the feast with him, this wedding feast, to experience how water is turned into wine, but more so that Jesus invites us and encourages us, like he did with his early disciples, to go out and to heal the world. Not only to bring water, but to bring the wine of heaven, through overturning situations of injustice, of oppression, to go out and to minister to those who are troubled and the poor. He calls each and every one of his disciples to do that, so that all can be invited, all can participate in the feast of the kingdom. Jesus encouraged his disciples from the very beginning and encourages us, as it were, to go with him and to heal the world. That's what Jesus meant when he taught the disciples the prayer, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." We are to bring not only the greetings of the wedding, the feast, to our neighbourhood, to our community. We are to embrace our community with service, and as I said, in the world at large, to be concerned for the world as it is and its future, both in terms of those that have little, but also in terms of our environment, in caring for our world. So this wedding, this feast at Canaan, allow God to speak to your heart. Call God to the centre of your home in your heart. Get him to sit at your table. See what he encourages you to do. And in your own life, think about how with each other, we together can make the earth like heaven and turn water into wine. Amen.